Hello, thespians. We are back again for yet another theater panel. This time we're doing Techies Do It in the Dark, Unveiling the Secrets of Theatrical Wizardry. Um, Unfortunately, John Harkness was not able to get join us today. His laptop decided to die on him. But we are joined by a lot of amazing panelists. And if you guys could introduce yourselves, um, Anthony, we're going to start with you. Let us know who you are, what your background in theater is, what you do, etc.
Excellent. Love to go first. Hi, I'm Anthony Vito. I've been the um, production operations manager for the University of South Florida in Tampa, Florida, College of the Arts. So we run the venues over there. So I deal with theater mostly every day as my full-time job, as well as I am by trade a lighting designer. And as you see, these boards up here are lovely programs of shows I have lit in the past. Um, so that's a bit about my background. I've done lighting and sound for over 10 years, and I've been with USF for over 10 years here in the Tampa Bay area. And I absolutely love what the technical side of theater can do.
Definitely. How about you, Jessica?
Hi, I'm Jessica, and I have been behind, under, beside, in the wings, etc. of theater since I was about 3 years old,
Oh, wow.
and did eventually parse that into a 20-year career as a stage manager. I am not currently working in the arts, but that doesn't change my love for it in the slightest.
Definitely. And you, Brandy.
Hey, I'm Brittany Blayton. I have been doing community theater, college theater since I was in high school. You can guess how long ago that was. At this beautiful place right here, this is the Ritz in downtown Newberry, South Carolina. So, a community theater. I have my bachelor's degree in technical theater from Converse University. Um, so I've been doing tech on and off. I've done it in different um, venues, everything from your theater to like in the back of a room. You know, you've got your little soundboard, and I'm there kind of adjusting. And as far as like what parts of technical theater, I've done pretty much everything. Costume design. I love stage management. That's my like baby because I get to touch everything. But I've done it all.
Definitely, definitely. Well, since you're on my screen, I'm going to ask you our first question. Uh, what initially sparked your interest in the behind the scenes world of theater?
Well, it's actually pretty funny. When I started at Converse, everybody that was declaring theater was wanted to act, and that was what everybody was interested in. And I was just kind of like, you know what, I'll try it. Somebody, basically we were like, we'll kind of take turns. And I absolutely loved it. I loved being behind the scenes. I thought it was so much more exciting than being on stage. Because every night is different and it's constantly problem solving, and I just really thrive in that sort of environment.
Definitely, definitely. How about you, Anthony? What sparked your interest in it?
I think it's funny. We all probably started for the most part, unless you're born in it, kind of on
Mhm.
the performing side. You're either a singer or a dancer, or you got into it at a young age. And then in, high school or community theater, you start learning what scenic design is, what costume design is, and then sometimes you get lucky and learn what lighting and sound design is on that world. And it just ended up happening. I enjoyed performing. I got into college and had a lot of friends who were on the technical side, and then you start getting a keener interest in that as opposed to realizing like I'm probably not cut off for the performing side, so let me go ahead and do this. And then you just start kind of learning, and that, I think that's kind of the neat thing is realizing you're still part of the team when you're working quote unquote backstage, or you're a designer, or you're on the production team, and you're just as important as everyone who's on stage. So then you start kind of finding out your niche and realizing what you enjoy, and then here you are. You start just kind of working through in it. So I kind of feel like that part of performance, for performance, and on the beginning part of it, kind of leans into your at least love for it to get into the backstage side of it.
Definitely, definitely. And I do want to say, we welcome audience feedback, questions, everything like that. So if you have any questions, any feedback, please leave a comment. We love to hear from people. Um, and that being said, Jessica, you said that you've been doing stuff since 3 years old. So tell us how that started.
So my father was a very excellent community theater actor, and it was sort of a family affair thing. So I went to a whole bunch of his rehearsals all my life. And so from the point at which I was old enough to walk and follow instructions, it was, do you remember who the director is? Okay, good. Take this to the director. And so little me wandering around the theater, just helping out, carrying things, moving things, holding things. Once I got old enough, being on book, things like that. And so in middle school, I was a big girl now, and I was going to do my own show just like Dad. And I auditioned for the middle school musical, which I didn't get cast. Only at that point did they say, hey, we need people for the tech crew as well. And let me tell you, swinging a hammer is so therapeutic to a bullied 10-year-old.
Definitely.
And so from then on, I just did tech all through school. We had a very temperamental light board in my high school, an ancient 2-scene preset where the fuse would shoot out of the back and hit the window of the booth if the wrong person touched it, and the wrong person was anybody but me and 3 other people.
Definitely.
And then got a theater degree, focused in stage management and scenic design, and went pretty much straight into stage management out of college and did that for 20 years.
Awesome. Well, wow. Well, we can't all grow up in theater, and we can't all, as we all know, we can't all be actors. But what is a common misconception about the role of the tech crew in performing arts or theater? What would you say is the most common misconception you've heard, and how do you combat that, Jessica?
I would say a misconception. I don't know how common it is, because I don't know how many non-theater initiated people are even thinking about the tech crew. But I think there's this impression that, oh, they just show up and do the show and that's all they do. Whereas even if you're on stage crew, you're there an hour, 2 hours, depends on how convoluted the show is ahead of time. You're there afterwards. Maybe you're in during the week making repairs. And that's to say nothing about all of the designers and the folks building the designs and those who are involved in the rehearsal process sometimes even. So I'd say that they just show up, do their stuff, and go away again is probably the biggest misconception I think I know of.
Definitely. How about you, Brandy? What do you find as a misconception?
I'm gonna go with tech isn't fun and you only do it because you're not on stage. And I don't think that's true. I mean, even when you listen to the stories of the 3 of us and kind of how we got into tech, maybe that's how you started doing tech, but that's not why you keep doing tech. Tech is so much fun, but it's also really hard. You're in the theater before the actors get there. You leave after they go home. So you have to really love it in order to like keep doing it and keep coming back to it. It really is a labor of love.
Definitely. And sorry, I'm trying to get that off the screen. I'm not a great tech person. How about you, Anthony? What is your most common misconception you've heard?
Sure. StreamYard's its own ball of wax there, so it's a little different, but I understand that one. So Brandy pretty much kind of took what I was going to say, so I'll kind of pivot a little bit and kind of go. A common misconception is people don't really know what tech in the performing arts is. They say, "Oh, I see lights and sound or whatever," but if you hear that, like you don't understand it, or you don't notice it until it's bad, until it's the actors are speaking and it's dark. What's going on? Or there's clearly some costumes missing. What's happening? So I think the common misconception is like, what exactly does each role do? And then you start looking at, well, this is what a crew is. If you literally show like, hey, that show you saw at the the Broadway tour, this is the production team, this is the design team. And you go, wow, there's that many people that are involved. And then you start getting like, how do you even start? And then you go, oh boy, do I envy you. Let me show you how you start. A lot of it's just, especially with all the different levels, it's like, how do we start? What do you do? And it's kind of the explanation of just like, it's not just theater magic, although it makes it look like the whole concept is that we make it look like that. I buried the lead a little bit. I did end up graduating with a degree in theater design. I feel like I just said I went to college and maybe quit. That wasn't true. I did graduate with a degree in theater design. So we do have that in common. But yeah, so I think that's kind of the common misconception, and like trying to tell everybody like at the family dinner, this is what you do, is always harder than you say, like, you know, oh, I sell insurance. It's like, well, this is what I do at the theater. Oh, you put on shows. That's a little more involved in that. But yeah.
I will also say, when you're talking about like friends and family and stuff, a lot of times when you tech and you're like really excited and you're like, oh, you should come see my show, and they're like, oh, but you're not on stage. Like, why would you come see it? And I was the stage manager for Murder on the Orient Express last fall at the Ritz, and I'm going to be honest, I am probably more proud of the work that I did as a stage manager on that show than a lot of the acting things that I did in college, because I just put so much work into that show. And so I think that's another thing with maybe a misconception about tech, is that we're not a part of the show, right? So like, we're not as big of a contribution as the actors.
Definitely. So is there a specific type of person that really does well in tech, or can just anybody do it?
I think anybody can find their place on a tech crew. It just because, I mean, I feel like stage managers, it works to be kind of type A. Like, you know, I don't know that a type B stage manager is going to make it on a super chaotic production. But, you know, if you're just like slightly interested, you could always do run crew, which is where run crew basically is kind of the catch-all. So like, if things need to be changed, like sets need to be changed, the run crew does that, or they like help the actors change costumes and that sort of thing. And then if you also don't like time pressures, you can always help with things before the show. So like, since we're a community theater, we do a lot of calls for like the community to come in and like help paint and like build sets and that sort of thing. So you don't even have to be involved on the production night. You can do stuff beforehand to help with theater.
Definitely.
I'm going to lean in and disagree with Brandy a little bit. I feel like to be in tech for theater, you have to be a person who is conscientious. So somebody who's just, oh yeah, it's good enough, it's fine, is not going to thrive well behind the scenes in whatever role. And for those who are involved with the show production itself, day to day, night to night, they also need to be calm under pressure. But conscientiousness, I think, is going to be most important, whether you're building a costume and you need to make sure you got all the pins out and that all the seams are nice and strong, or if you're doing rigging, I mean, that's definitely people's lives on the line if that messes up. It's conscientious.
Well, and
you don't want a Phantom of the Opera situation.
No chandeliers falling unless it's on purpose.
And that takes certifications and several years of experience too. And I kind of I go with you in that there's a lot of detail oriented, and there's a lot of different worlds of, are you in management, or you're managing a crew, or are you on the crew, or are you on run crew, or are you follow spot operator, you know, those types of things, to kind of figure out what type of person it is. But it really, you kind of have to also understand, like, know what's happening at all times and understand the show just as much as the actors do, because you got to know when this quick change happens or this lighting change happens. We got to go ahead and do this, you know, do this set change. And if we're not 100% on our game and we miss it, one set change gets missed, a fly comes in, you get bonked in the head, and it's a whole bunch of bad stuff going on at that point. Or quick changes miss, and you have to have somebody go out there and try to improv. Hopefully, it's an actor, not a not the run crew, because that's always really fun at the end of the day. So it's a lot. I mean, it takes a lot of. It's a whole team too. It's not just one person. So it takes a lot of people to kind of all buy in at the same moment and be very detail oriented. Yeah.
Mhm. So maybe not like the big idea people, but I want to make this successful and I'm dedicated to making, even if I just have a small role type of people, then.
There are
Dedicated is
no
an excellent word.
Yeah, there are no small roles. Just
Mm.
I won't finish it because I don't you know what I mean though.
No, I do. I totally understand. But definitely. Well, I guess we kind of touched on this in the last question, but in what ways is the role of tech crew indispensable? And can you give examples of how uh, they were essential for the success of a, a production that you're on?
Well, it's since I'll go first since I'm on the screen.
Yep,
It's just
that's how it works with
you
me.
can't make
I'm
things happen.
sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. You know, if there's no crew kind of running the show, you don't really have lights happening. You don't have sound happening. You're kind of just doing a avant-garde black box show with a cube, essentially. So it's indispensable in the sense that this is how we create the splendor. So there
Mhm,
are some shows where you can just go ahead and do, hey, we are in a small space and we're doing production and we're doing kind of something more high art. Whereas the splendor of theater is what brings people here. They love to see those exuberant sets or those lights. And even if you go to a community theater, there's still a bit of, hey, we painted these sets and we did this work. And a lot of times it's like, if it's kids in the community theater, hey, come see their work. This is really, really cool. I think the indispensable part of it is that creates the scene center, that creates where we're at, and that kind of puts you in the theoretical uh, the suspension of disbelief in the show that we're doing. And without that crew creating and then also running it, we would be out of it and it wouldn't feel like we're seeing the show as we are. Like, it's really neat to say, oh, I saw Matilda and the entire proscenium arch is lined with books. It's like,
mhm,
I get it. Okay, I'm in it. If that wasn't there, okay, yeah, I'm still watching the show. But that created that one moment in that one production's timeline, especially that, hey, that was a scene design. Maybe it wasn't, the West End version, but it was
mhm,
a version that did live and there's no other crew that can do that in that particular production in that particular point in time. And it's like, that's the cool thing about theater. I kind of went on a tangent there, but yeah, that's kind of an example of production. And when I do lighting design for my shows, I like to make sure I'm making every show a nice moment in time of, hey, I lit falsettos. I recently lit the prom. I'm actually wearing the shirt. It's kind of hard to see. Mine's not as good as the multi-million dollar ones, but I'm gonna make it special for that team that was there. And I think that's what kind of makes the tech crew indispensable, because even the person who puts the table down in the show created that in that moment in time. I don't
Aw.
know. I get all dramatic when it comes to theater stuff.
No, that's totally fine. Do you have any examples of maybe when, like, the crew saved the show or anything like that, or not really?
I work a lot of shows in production management, and I see kind of a lot of things that we have to save. It's kind of hard to pick just one, but there are just moments where you have a traveler in and you're doing an upstage move and something doesn't work, and you just create the time that you need to make it happen so the audience doesn't see what's going on. And a lot of that time is just figuring out with the actors, whoever is back there, okay, we need to break this piece off to get it off the stage so we can make sure that the next move can happen. So that way we're not holding up and creating that and losing that sense of disbelief.
Mhm.
So as part of like individual moments, I kind of don't have anything off the top of my head. I do specifically remember there was um, there was a moment where we were in a black box theater. I was the lighting board operator and the like associate lighting designer, and we had a light explode, and the lamp was teetering on this kind of grid, and we just kind of tiptoed our way because we knew what the show was and when we can do it to make sure that that didn't, then fall on people. So that was
Definitely.
kind of the moment that I seem to remember of kind of creating that, like, hey, this is what backstage crew has to deal with and has to work with to make sure that we don't
Sorry.
alter anything else.
Definitely. I'm not sure, my internet might be wonky, so I apologize if I talk over anybody. Uh, Jessica, why don't you share? Why do you think the tech crew is indispensable? And do you have any stories of when crew has saved the day on any of your productions?
Sure, absolutely. I think that the tech crew is indispensable because they allow for specialization in the theater. So you have
Mm.
actors who can just act, and you have lighting folks who just worry about lighting, and you have costumers who are just worrying about costumes. And so when you break all of that out, each person can focus on their area and really bring their best skills to bear. Whereas if you've got an actor who has to make their own costume and is maybe consulting with folks backstage on how to move things, and when you've got these really small groups, they can do some astonishing things, but like Anthony said, the spectacle maybe isn't as possible. As far as the tech crew
Hmm.
sort of saving the day, I mean, more times than I can count, I have a very similar story of a light that went and was precarious and needed to be dealt with from the grid during the show. And somebody's taking their boots off and running up there in their socks, trying not to cause noise while the romantic scene is still happening down center. But for where they're absolutely indispensable, I want to give a quick shout out to the Center for Puppetry Arts here in Atlanta. I saw somebody made a comment earlier about, well, maybe I want to do a show naked in the dark. Without the tech crew at the Puppet Center, you don't have anything to look at even naked in the dark. They do absolutely everything that's visible there. So that's definitely a place where the crew is absolutely indispensable.
Definitely, definitely. And how about you, Brandy?
I'm trying to come up with a different story because mine also is about lights. I feel like we're gonna have everybody terrified of lights in a theater.
Basic
Um,
electrician work, right?
Chandeliers falling on people's heads. I mean, but that was the
uh,
audience, so it doesn't
well, it
really
wasn't.
matter.
I mean, it was gonna fall. Well, mine was. I'll tell my light story. The crew is indispensable because we solve problems and make them go away without the actors ever knowing, so they don't panic and they don't worry. We were doing a production of Dead Man's Cell Phone at
Mm.
Converse, and right before intermission, there's a scene where they're in a paper, like a stationery store, and we were dropping pieces of paper off the catwalk down onto the stage, and we were being very careful, making sure they didn't hit lights. But we had that one piece that got hit just right and blew onto a light. And then you have all of us up there, like basically trying to blow it to get it off. And then running down as soon as the curtains close, we're like on the stage with a fire extinguisher, like just in case something went wrong. But wouldn't you know it, just us up there looking like absolute fools, fanning our arms, fanning pieces of cardboard, got that piece down. But yeah, lights. It's I guess it's our job to solve problems with light fixtures, so that nobody else has to know about it.
Definitely, definitely. I seem to recall in high school when we were doing the Sound of Music. Uh, there was a problem. Maria is supposed to be coming up over these mountains, right? And I mean, I went to a high school. We didn't even have changing backgrounds. It was one background through the whole thing, and then they'd close the curtain. Well, the curtain got stuck. So we had this background of this fancy house in the background while Maria is singing in the mountains about finding her the sound of music. And anyway, uh, my boyfriend at the time, he ended up climbing up on this. I'd say it was probably from the 1940s rigging to untangle this cord so that we could actually change scenes while Maria is doing that, her thing. So definitely they are definitely indispensable. um he did survive somehow. I told him them not to do it. Um, anyway, we've talked a lot about theater tech crew and how they make everything possible. How do they collaborate with other departments, either actors, directors, set designers, to ensure that production works right? Like, is there anything in particular that needs to happen on the tech crew side to make sure, say, uh, that Maria is actually in the mountains and not in the fancy house?
I can go first since I'm up on the big screen. Um,
Definitely.
so it takes a lot of, I would say, pre-production meetings, even before you bring the actors in, to kind of start and get that vision together, because everyone needs to be on the same page. And I mean that starts to day one. So I've been in productions where we've had like scheduled production meetings, but also with tech crew, it's like an evolving thing. So like even once you start bringing the actors in, as soon as tech starts, I mean you're there late talking it through. I think it honestly just takes a lot of communication to make sure that your tech is unified. It also really takes like a great director that kind of knows their vision and what they want. Because say for instance that like we're doing a Shakespeare and I'm doing costumes and I'm like, you know what? I think it would be great if this was like the 1960s and we're like all dressed for the 1960s. And then, I haven't talked to the set designer, but he thought we were doing like something traditional. And we were going to be, it was going to be Elizabethan. And so you kind of have to make sure that you have someone to unify those visions and make sure that they all kind of meet in the middle.
Definitely. How about you, Anthony?
Yeah, it's really all about just making sure you have the shared vision with the director, and a lot of times there's producers involved, artistic directors, a lot of different heads involved to figure out this is the show that we're doing, this is how we want to do it, and then letting the designers kind of play with that. It takes all sorts of meetings. You have production meetings with everybody, then you have creative meetings with the designers, then you have producer meetings just to make sure everyone's on the same page and what the budget is. Because sometimes it's like, hey, we want to do this crazy thing. It's like, yeah, with what money? So that ends up being the hard thing. I always feel like as a lighting designer, I get off a little easier because, lighting designers do an incredible amount of work. Don't get me wrong, but we design to the scenic, we design to the costumes, and we design to what the show is. And mostly we're using the same technology that the theater can provide. So when it comes to seeing these creative designs, the scenic and costumes have to be kind of in lockstep, because like you're right, if you all of a sudden decide, hey, we're going to do this as a period piece, but the scenic designer went like, I wish I knew that. I have a spaceship. What are we going to do now? So kind of working with that, and then what the directorial vision is as well. And a lot of that matters too, because in rehearsals, you're the stage manager and you're trying to make sure that everyone knows where the door is. And the scene designer went, oh, we're not doing doors anymore. Everything is a teleport pad. You go, okay, how are we going to do this? So as a lighting designer, I kind of go in just light afterward. It's great. No, I'm kidding. There's a lot of work that goes into the lighting as well. I don't want to put down any of that, but it's all just communication and collaboration. And anytime I see it, the best shows I see is when there's not a lot of ego too involved, because sometimes you work with some people who they need to be the main character, and it's like, that's not, we're all collaborating here. But it's all just that collaboration and making sure that everyone's on the same page from day one, to make a seamless production.
Definitely. How about you, Jessica?
So Anthony and Brandy addressed like the big concept vision for the show, and I want to address that question from the day-to-day running of the show. And the answer to how do they collaborate is via the stage manager. Stage manager is the central communication hub in the day-to-day between pretty much everybody involved in the actual physical today we're putting the show on. They're collaborating with the scene crews and the sound and lighting ops and the wardrobe crews sometimes, and front of house and everybody else. And so they're sort of the one node that every bit of communication goes through on its way to somewhere else.
Definitely. Definitely. Well, we got a question from the audience. And so, Jessica, since you're on my screen, I'm going to have you go first. I'd be interested in hearing everyone's biggest mistake they've made, seen, and how that impacted the show. So, how about you, Jessica?
I've got a doozy that happened when I was in college. I was luckily not at fault, but I was there to see it. I worked on my campus's touring house as an electrician and carpenter, and we had a touring opera company that will go unnamed, who was finishing up their production. I was coming in for my shift, helping to load out that night. And something they had done in programming their lights set our portable dimmer rack on fire. And they took and they took the wrong type of fire extinguisher to it.
Not the grease one. Yikes.
So it stopped being on fire real
Great.
quick, but and luckily it was the end of the show. It was literally the end of the final piece, and we were able to manage curtain call with whatever lights we could cobble together that weren't being routed through the portable rack. But yeah, all of us electricians spent the next like 2 weeks fine tooth comb cleaning out that poor dimmer rack, and then they set it on fire again the next year.
Well,
We'll invite them
missed it.
back.
Of course they did.
We kept them away from the fire extinguishers that time and used a fire blanket, but what was that show?
It's cursed. It's what it is.
It was cursed. Yeah, fire safety is
Yes,
really,
I agree with
really
that.
important. If any sort of fire whatsoever
mean,
is involved in your production, fire marshal,
Mhm.
get them to okay it.
I'll never forget Dragon Con, AJ and Allie. There was one of the speakers literally caught on fire. I was not there, but I saw the aftermath. Um, how about you, Anthony?
Always got to make sure those hotel spaces, you know what, breakers are every outlet is, because if you plug in all the speakers into one, it's not going to work out when you have those split. That's a different problem. When you said that they brought the wrong fire extinguisher, I was like, and somehow it exploded afterwards too. No, that's always unfortunate when you're dealing with that, especially when you're dealing. We kind of dabble in amateur electrician work. We always make sure that when there's actual, like, we need to get the fire marshal to approve everything. And if you have the fire marshal as a good friend, that they're able to at least tell you, hey, fix that part.
Fire marshal isn't the bad guy.
Oh, yeah, listen to them. Don't put the ladder in front of the fire, in front of the emergency exit. What a concept. I'm kidding. Yeah, so they're always listen to them. And then so I guess the biggest mistake I ever made, like, I can't really think of like a mistake I went like, oh, this is crucial, like this is really bad for life safety or fire safety in any sense. I would say like the biggest mistake I ever had was not quite paying attention at the soundboard and hitting go when I shouldn't have, and fired the wrong sound, had to completely stop it, and then we had a dancer kind of dancing in silence, and it seems like, okay, that happens occasionally, whatever, but like I took that to heart. Like, that was bad. I felt terrible. And ever since then, I've 100% made sure that everything I've ever done, I am 100% in. I am when it's time to work, it's time to work. And when we're there, we're making sure that everything is as good as it possibly can be for everybody. And even in management now, when a million things are going on at the same time, I always make sure I'm 100% dialed in and I understand what's happening. And I know it seems like really silly for like, that's not that big of a deal, but that kind of pushed me into making this into a career, into my professional world, that I'll always remember that. Don't mess up the way that you did back then, because then you'll go ahead and make this show perfect. And I also, kind of go with a giggle, because like what we do is supposed to be fun. So like when people take it super serious, it's like you messed up. It's like, it's supposed to be fun. Are we having fun? Let's have fun. Make sure you're having fun. If you're not having fun in theater, what are we doing? Unless it's a tragedy. Then we're like, having fun, but being sad about it.
We're having fun making everyone else sad.
Yes.
That is true.
Was the other part of it? What's
my
the other
internet
thing? Yeah.
does not like me. Hold on.
It might be me.
Well, while we're getting Sarah back, I can't think of any like particularly big. When I think about times I messed up as a member of the tech crew, I think about the time during a production meeting I poured hot tea all over myself, and ended up with burns, and then had to go into tech week wearing black skirts because I had burns on my legs. But I can't think of anything that I've done that like affected a production during it. So let me knock on wood really quick, because let's continue to keep it that way. But from an acting perspective, I mean, I've been on stage and sound cues, have gone off early, and everyone has to adapt really quick. And you have to make sure you have that sort of teamwork to kind of get through it and kind of like trust everyone around you to, kind of cover mistakes. And so that could also be why I'm not thinking of anything. I've been really lucky to work with teams that have all been really cooperative and really great at working together and making sure that when things start going wrong, they start immediately getting back on the right track.
I find that malfunctions happen a lot more often than mistakes.
Yeah.
You just got to keep the train rolling. I think you said that right, and that's part of having the right crew, and that's why it is important to what we do here, because maybe something doesn't happen the way that it should, but how do we get it back on track? And that's live theater, and that's the cool thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I love going to see a theater show and seeing a minute mistake and going like, oh, but they trekked through it, and this is really cool. Didn't take me out of the performance.
Well, and I also think with stuff like that, we notice things that other people don't. So I got to see Queen and Adam Lambert a couple weeks ago in Atlanta.
Sweet.
And we were really far on the side, and so we couldn't see like the very front of the stage. But I had a perfect view to watch the crew, especially before the show. And everyone's like, "Oh, it's about time to get started." And I'm like, "Yeah, the crew is just sitting there, like they're not panicking. We still got like 5-10 minutes. Like you got,
Yep.
whatever." And so I got to like watch them do that, and I feel like I would have picked up on a mistake before someone else would have, because I'm keyed into that. I'm interested in that. I want to see that happening.
I think we can let's go ahead and segue a little bit off of that. So that was an excellent question, because I think we all kind of see that or notice that when we're seeing shows. I'm 100% with you. I loved seeing that, or going like you see the first show of a tour and go like, follow spot's not quite there yet. It's okay. I understand where we're supposed to be looking. That's why it's fun to kind of see that, as long as they don't go awry. We had a Broadway show of Beetlejuice come through here, and the fire alarm went off, and then everyone had to leave the theater and everyone had to come back in. But I wasn't there for that. Heard this secondhand, but everyone's like, "Oh, we're not ready to start yet." I saw Beetlejuice. He was having a smoke outside. I'm not certain he was. I think that was just like colloquialism, but all kind of fun with it.
I do find that I enjoy that pre-show time when I'm going to see a show, and just sort of looking around and anticipating, what are the lights? Where are the lights aimed? What are the light fixtures? Ooh, that set piece looks like it might fall away. Let's see what happens when it gets going. It's fun to have a little of that inside baseball.
Yeah, because also I feel like, so I'm going to talk about another concert, because when we talk about tech, we're really not just talking about theater. We're talking about anything with a stage or where people are front and center. So one of my best friends and I, she also does technical theater. We went to go see Fall Out Boy in their last tour, and again we were like, that curtain is just mysteriously placed right there. That's hiding a set piece. And then they like slowly were taking curtains down, but we knew that there were going to be big reveals of set pieces, because it just looked out of place. And so sometimes maybe you spoil things for yourself too, but
definitely. Well, I apologize. I think I'm back. Can we hear me?
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right, you can't see my face right now, but that's okay. I appreciate you guys all covering for me. Yay, theater. Um,
True. We're just covering up the mistakes, so you didn't even know there was a problem there. We were just going to keep going.
Exactly.
Show must go on.
I
I
had
was about to
24
segue into another
questions.
question for everybody,
Yeah.
but here we go.
yeah, definitely, and by all means, please do. If my internet stops working, because of course I don't work for the internet company at all, so there's no reason why my internet would be working, right? Okay, we got a comment here.
It's true.
Oh yeah, this seems like an appropriate question, or appropriate comment. Anyway, so what preparations go into creating a seamless technical experience? Like, uh, is there? I know, Anthony, you said you do the lighting design. So, what preparations go into you doing that?
So when it comes to design work, it's really just making sure what venue you're in, what the show is, try to figure out, is this something colorful? Is this something that wants to be grounded in reality, or something more fantastical? And go with there. A lot of what light design is, what's the venue I'm working in? What's the instrumentation that I'll be dealing with? Slash, what's the ability that I can have? Do I only have 12
Mhm.
dimmers I can deal with? Is it a full rig with 200 lights that I can go ahead and play with? How much is intelligent
Mhm.
lighting and fixtures? How much moving and how much color changing can I do? And the other side of that is, what's the budget to figure out what can I bring in as
Mhm.
a rental, and what can I do to make this more of a splendor from the lighting side. So to try to create a seamless technical experience is, it's all about the paperwork when it comes to lighting. I know it seems like, well, I just hang some lights and I point them, right? Well, not really, not really. Once I get what the venue is, once we get what a scenic ground plan is, then I'm in the drafting software, and I'm figuring out what's the mathematics. Oh, we do math. We hate that. It's a lot of trigonometry in lighting if you think about beam angles. Um, Trying to
So
figure
there
out
was a
what's the best
use to
spot.
that,
Yes, calculus, no.
not just
Trig,
to buy
yes.
the ridiculous, not just to buy the ridiculously expensive calculator. Uh,
Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah,
uh,
you really have to kind of flex that muscle there. Trig, it's crazy how, like, it's like, wow, we use triangles. It's funny how it's a triangle with the height and the length and the distance. But yeah, it's all about hitting the paperwork, making sure you have your math right, what the instrumentation is, and then figuring out what you can use to add that spectacle to it. And a lot of times you're limited and you don't have a lot of budget, so you have to kind of get creative with it based on what the show is. And a lot of people want, like, oh, I want this to look like I want this to look like Wicked. And it's like, well, I can make it green. That's about it. And then some other places, like I lit falsettos recently in a very tiny theater, only had 24 dimmers, and I brought in LEDs. I was able to broker a really good deal with a rental company, and they said, hey, go ahead and do this. And we lit all these gray walls with a lot of different colors for falsettos. Speaking of shows that make you sad, whoo. But yeah, so it's all about that. I'm from a lighting end, and it's funny how that's part of it, and then, like, from the other design parts of it, that's also kind of a whole different world. But yeah, that's it's all about the paperwork for me.
definitely. Definitely. How about you, Brandy? What preparations go into your stuff when you uh do tech?
So I'm kind of the same thing. You have to kind of look at your budget. Another thing that we haven't talked about, especially from like a community theater end, is you have to look at the number of people that you have available, or even, this example that I'm going to talk about wasn't community theater; it was in college. I did synchronized swimming, and uh, besides being on the team, I was also the technical director for the team. And so I had to, like, some of the people that were doing our lighting were also, doing main stage productions at the college, or um, had a night class and couldn't be there. And so I had to kind of balance, how many spots do I want versus what do I actually like have, you
Mm-hmm.
know, the people to run. So I think a lot of tech, no matter where you are, is resource management. Um, because, like, even when I've done like costumes, you have to make sure that you're balancing the amount of money that you need to spend. I feel like that just across the board, resource management is really important. Um, I'm not really sure what else to add there.
No,
100%.
Yeah.
no, definitely. How about you, Jessica? Do you have anything to add?
I'm going to loop back around to that thing I mentioned earlier of conscientiousness.
Mhm.
And ditto Anthony's paperwork. If I can, I want to take us on just a quick exercise of looking into the mind of a stage manager on the first time they're reading through a script.
Mhm.
So the
Ooh.
script says James checks his watch.
Mhm.
So the stage manager has to write down that James has a watch. The costume
Mhm.
department needs to know it. The props department needs to know it. They then have to keep track of that watch through the rest of the show. Does it come off? Does it get handed to somebody? Does James have a fight scene where the watch might get damaged? Does it get moved around? Is it a vital prop to some plot in the show? Is it a pocket watch? If it's a pocket watch, well, now costumes needs to know that he has to have a pocket in which to keep the pocket watch.
Mhm.
And so every single tiny piece of the show, even something as minor as a stage direction that says he checks his watch, has to be
Mhm.
tracked by somebody and has to be usually
Definitely.
communicated amongst several different crews. I mean, if there's a particularly massive lighting spectacle, it might be important that he has a glass fast watch on that might glint out into the audience somehow that we don't want it to happen. Do we have to mat down the surface of that watch? That's one line,
Definitely.
4 words. All of a sudden involves 4 departments.
And the playwright's like, oh man, I just did that out of nowhere. I didn't think this was going to cause
That
such a
wasn't
problem.
important.
Yeah.
That huge,
Yeah. Now, so we talk a lot about like the stage. You've talked a lot about the stage manager needing to write things down and stuff like that. So, how does communication help or hinder or rely on the coordination in the backstage, whether that be rigging, sound, lights? How does that communication? How important is that communication? I guess is what I'm asking.
It is absolutely vital. Without some form of communication back there, uh, chaos. We'll just go with chaos. I am so incredibly grateful to live in the era of belt pack radios and headsets where you can
Mm,
actually talk to your crew, amongst the departments. Um, used to be before that was common, you'd have a belt pack that was actually hooked into a wire. So you only go so far from the wall. A lot of places are still using clear comm systems.
I
And
I love how you're saying that. It's like our venue just recently got wireless, and we've always been wired for this longest time. It almost like it's ancient history. Oh wait,
no,
well here we go.
nothing in theater
Sorry,
is
I
ancient
didn't mean to butt in
history.
there, but I just love how you mentioned that. Cause it's like, what, you had to be stuck to a wall. It's like, yeah, well,
And then prior to that, we would have been working with cue lights. So the stage manager would have had little light switches by their console where they'd flip one on that meant stand by,
mhm,
and depending on the system in your theater, they'd flip another one on that said go. They would probably have ones for different sides of the stage, maybe if they're really lucky, different banks, so that the fly crew doesn't have to keep track of when their cues are versus, folks moving sets on stage versus, you talk about really, really old manual dimmer systems, Anthony,
oh my
that
gosh,
take 5
yeah.
people to run.
Oh, and then half the time it's like, okay, now you got to repatch it into this channel over here. Hopefully you do it at the right.
So, yeah, ooh, I can't hear you, Anthony. Can anybody else, or am I the one who went out?
No, I couldn't hear him either.
I
I
couldn't hear
hit the
you
old
either,
unmute
Anthony.
button.
There you are.
Oh,
Um, I was saying, like, yeah, you have the old style patch phase where it's like, okay, after seed 2, you got to unpatch from 3 and put it into 6. Hoping that everyone just does it, at the right time.
Well, and when that communication goes down, you have to think quick about how you're going to use it. So during Murder on the Orient Express last fall, my assistant stage manager's mic went out, so he could hear me, but he couldn't say anything. So like we did a lot of charades. It would be like yes, no, and then if he was trying to like alert me to a problem, we kind of had to come up with quick sort of methods for me to know that. It would have been great if both of us would have known sign language, but we just kind of had to adapt. Because when the communication breaks down, set pieces aren't going to move. Actors are going to mix their cues even, because if they're not being, a lot of times, there are different types of actors, but you always have at least one that isn't quite aware of what's happening on stage. That's like, maybe dealing with something personal, or just, that you have to remind, this
Opera.
way, my darling. And so, I've been that actor, so it's fine. I can say such things. And so if you don't have communication, you don't have a show.
Definitely. Anthony, do you have anything to add to that? And I'm also going to kind of streamline that into the next question I have, which is, how do you think technology will continue to shape the future of tech? Because I know you said that you just got an upgrade to wireless. So
Oh, that's huge, because then I can walk around and not be, pushed to a wired. Communication matters, and I always think it's funny when something were to fail, because as a stage manager, I think every stage manager would be like, the ideal situation is I clone myself 8 times, and then that's my backstage crew, because I know what I'm doing. But I have to trust people, and
that
trusting people
is
the
my
hard part,
ideal stage crew.
right? So when it comes to communication, you said like you don't go, or you don't go. You're afraid to say the word go because someone's gonna hit a button. Somehow it's just like button. So you don't go until I say it, and then the communication goes off. You'd be like, well, you're reading the script too. You should have went. Well, you told me not to go. Yes, I did, I suppose. So it's important to be like to make sure it's like in the event of emergency, this is what we do, or this is how we handle that, whether it's a backup system or any of that. But you guys handle that. I'll kind of go through to how technology is involving the industry. There's a lot of digital technology that's being added to the theater now. Everyone wants to say projections. A lot of it's LED screens as well, but it's power. If you go to older theaters, we're all really powered for dimmer systems, because we have a lot of old circuitry that needs to be all of our lighting systems are that way. Now everything can be run with LEDs, and we need more constant power than we ever have in the past. So almost all these older theaters, you have to retrofit with new electronics and new electrical power to just get the new equipment in, because they're wired in such a different way. And with how big projections are and how big LED screens are going to be to creating these scenic designs, we almost need to consider that these older theaters need to go through these major renovations to kind of keep up with the times. And it's harder because like these major venues can do that, but not every community theater can. And let's say they spent all this money 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and built this theater, and the consultant said, this is what you're going to need. And then all of a sudden LEDs are taking over, and it's like, okay, well, I don't have the power to do this. Well, now your renovation is going to be $250,000. Well, we can't do that. That's kind of part of what we look at, what the future is. I'm not even going to touch AI, but that is also the future. I'm not touching it.
The other issue with when you talk about like old historic theaters is like, this one used to be a movie theater. And so everything from the dressing rooms to where our storage is all retrofitted. I am going to talk about projections because that's something that's been I thought was really cool. The first time I saw projections was on a cruise ship. They were doing like dancing. She was dancing to some classic rock song, and she was like, had a fireball or whatever. And I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. And then I got to go, I went to graduate school in Scotland, and I got to go to the Edinburgh Royal Military Tattoo, which is just like a like performance of all these military bands from across the world, and they literally use the Edinburgh Castle as a projection screen, and it was the coolest thing because they were able, instead of, the castle's cool, but instead of having this blank wall that they can't put anything up there, right? Nothing, you can't attach anything to that. All of a sudden, it's the flags of all the countries, and it's like moving, and there's like videos going up there. And so I feel like we've already seen projections. That was 2014 when I saw that. And like projections are even crazier. I saw Taylor Swift's show. I saw the Eras Tour live. Like the projections on the floor with her were we watched her dive into the stage and she swam under it, and like whenever she stepped, we had lightning bolts, and the amount that projections have changed even in that short amount of time has been, it's crazy. And I imagine we're eventually going to have projections of actors. Now, whether that's AI, we're gonna go with no. Like, we'll have the ability to have performers perform long after they're here, hopefully, which I think would be really cool. When I was at the Queen concert, spoilers if you haven't seen it, I think they're done with their US part of their tour, but they showed a video of Freddie, and you got to interact with that, and he did the callback thing that he was famous for. And I feel like eventually, maybe we'll have Freddie Mercury and Adam Lambert on stage together because of projections, which would be really cool. Ignoring the issues with like, then is that person going to get paid and all that, and the AI issues, just from a like pure enjoyment standpoint, will be really cool and really fun. Somebody on Facebook knows exactly what I'm talking about, but yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm excited to see what happens with projections, and if we can ever get them here at our beautiful Ritz Theater.
Definitely. Definitely. And how about you, Jessica? What do you think about the future of technology?
So I'm definitely
And
right
its
there with
impact.
Brandy and Anthony on projections, and seen them have a huge impact already. If anybody saw Harold and the Purple Crayon at the Center for Puppetry Arts a couple of years ago, we did some astonishing things with projections. But then I also want to look at automation. A lot of, and even going back to the 90s, a lot of scenic moves and the big spectacle stuff we're talking about, Cirque du Soleil, Phantom of the Opera, Les Mis, a lot of those big spectacle pieces were automated in their moves. Or if you go to Disney and see Fantasmic, that shows automated track all the way through. Automation, I think, is going to become a huge deal, especially as computers get smarter, they get smaller, they get easier to program, and live technical people are going to start to become more focused on safety, I think. When they're not having to shove the scenery, they can certainly be standing right there and make sure nobody's about to get hit by this piece of scenery that's going to go, regardless of what's going on, and be able to stop that. Or there's going to be a big demand for people who can program automation, much the same way there's a huge demand for video programmers right now. I think that's only going to get bigger and more accessible. And there's some really exciting stuff that can be done with that. Who knows what utter disaster Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark would have been if they hadn't been using some automation.
Oh, man. Oy.
Bad enough as it is.
Another panel.
Nope.
We could have a whole panel on the disaster that is Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark.
Big yikes.
So we are just about out of time. So I am going to try to turn on my camera again. We will see if this works. If it doesn't, I will go away again.
Cross fingers. Let's go.
If I can get it to go. Let's go. If it'll let me turn on my camera again. How do I? All right. Well, it won't let me turn it on, so that's fine. That being said, everyone, I would love if you guys would let us know where can we find you online, and what you're up to in the theater. Jessica, since you're first on my screen, why don't you go first?
Sure. I don't really have much of an independent online presence. You can find me on the Facebook Dragon Con Theater group. And what I'm working on right now is I work with an event company called Time Travel Events, putting on magical events in the Atlanta area.
Definitely. Awesome.
That's so cool.
How about you, Anthony?
Hi, I'm Anthony Vito. You can find me at Anthony Vito _ on most social medias, the Twitter, X, Instagram. world as well. For the theater, I work as the production operations manager for the USF College of the Arts in Tampa, Florida. I don't have any initial projects I'm working on right now, but I work several events. We have Nutcracker season coming up, which is very, very, very exciting. But yeah, find me there. I like to hang around the theater group as well, and yeah, catch me on social or on any of those places as well. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. Awesome. And you're welcome anytime. How about you, Brandy? Where can we find you?
I don't have a very big independent kind of social media presence either. As far as like theater things I'm working on currently, I had to take a little bit of a break for my health, so I'm not really doing anything right now. But the Newberry Community Players is putting on a show in 2 weeks. And right now I'm just waiting for them to need help when I can run in and help them. So that's kind of what I'm doing, like with community theater. We're always kind of on standby, waiting for the call. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, and where you can find me, I am always on that aforementioned theater group, Dragon Con Theater and Performing Arts Lovers Unofficial. The name is up top. Jessica, if you could point up for me. We're not right there. As far as like, subscribe, do all the things. Um, we are a unofficial theater group for Dragon Con, hoping to inspire more theater programming at Dragon Con itself. As far as what you can find us doing next, we are doing a panel beyond Shakespeare's Shadow, the unsung heroes of the Elizabethan stage. That will be December 12th at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, right here on the Facebook group. If you're watching this on the YouTube, it will be uploaded typically the Monday after that panel. Anyway, we hope you'll join us then. And in the meantime, we'll see you guys later. Bye.
Adios.
Hi, everybody.
Bye.